Welcome to MySQL Lesson 7. This demonstration will cover MySQL Administration Overview, the data directory, and exporting and importing databases. We'll start by opening up Server Status on your workbench. These are the same components that are discussed in Chapter 10, used by the command line. However, the workbench provides them in a much nicer format. Here, you can view your server status, which includes CPU usage, traffic, etc. By clicking Client Connections, you will see the status of your local host connection. There's a server startup and shutdown link where you can actually stop or start the server. The status variables and the system variables define the MySQL environment and are part of the MySQL data directory. This is quite an extensive list, and you can see that the names of the variables are listed on the left and the description on the right, and then in the middle is the actual value. Now, if you're looking for a specific data directory entry, you can use the search command at the top here. After clicking System Variables, I type in the word data to locate all of the data directory entries that have the word data within their name. This is a great way to find a specific one, such as data dir. And as shown in the textbook, data dir is the actual path for the directory that stores all of the MySQL databases on this server. Next on the left, you'll see server logs. This configuration is showing error and slow logs, but no general logs. I'd like to add a general log. I can click the Options File link on the left and then locate the General Log option under the Logging tab and enable General Logging and apply the change. This change will happen the next time the MySQL server is started. There are other tabs listed across the top for the options file. Feel free to review them on your own and have a look at what their settings are. Going back to our choices on the left, we have Users and Privileges. This is where we can set up and modify the user IDs, their passwords, the administrative roles, and their privileges. I just added this new user ID. And you can see that it has only limited privileges, whereas if I go back up and take a look at the root, it has everything checked and is able to do all administrative roles and all privileges. The Account Limits tab controls the maximum number of queries, updates, connections, and concurrent connections for this user. The default is 0, which means there are no limits. When the server was originally set up, 3 default root entries were automatically set up for these host addresses: localhost 127.0.0.1 and 1. You have an option of managing them right here. And that concludes a brief look at how to maintain users and their privileges. The next thing we're going to look at are the export and import. I'm going to click the Data Export, then go and select the database SampDB, allowing me to export to the default folder name below, but I can give it a new folder name. It will export everything that exists for the SampDB database. And like the default, I always try to use the date of the export in the name of the folder. I click Start Export and then watch the status of the log right here in the middle. It finally says that it has finished. Okay, let's have a look at the folder that was just created by the export using Windows Explorer. Notice that each table is exported separately as a .sql file, and the views are placed over in the sampdb_routines.sql file. Going back to our export window, you'll see that there are advanced options for data export. However, I chose not to change any of these in this particular example. You can choose to use some of these in the future should the need arise. The last selection on the left is for data import. It looks a good deal like the export. It will automatically fill in a folder name, but since we used a different name, we can locate the folder using Windows Explorer. I am able to find it pretty quickly based on my memory and knowing that it used the date of the export. So here it is. And now it's showing up on the data import. However, we haven't changed anything in that file, and to import it now would just replace it with the same information. To demonstrate the actual import, let's try creating a new database that can contain only the tables related to students. First, I want to preserve our original export by renaming the folder to include SampDB in the name. Then I'll copy the folder and paste it, plus rename it to include a new database name, MySampDB. That's a good start, but all of the files within this new folder are exact copies of the SampDB export. What can I do to change that? I can fix that in 3 easy steps. First, I'm going to go out and remove all of the tables that are not related to students. APOTHEGM, child, member, parent, and president, so that there would be 5 files remaining in the folder. Next, I'm going to rename all of those .sql files to have the prefix of mysampdb instead of SampDB. And finally, I'm going to open up each of those SQL files with an editor such as Notepad++, and then replace all of the occurrences of SampDB with mySampDB. And I have to do that with each of those 5 files. After you do the replace in the first of those 5 files, be sure and scroll down and take a look at the commands. It does the create, but it also does an insert command, which includes all of the data that was backed up when it did the export. This is really handy because it preserves the information. As you're updating each of these files, feel free to go back and look through the information that's getting changed. There are basically 3 changes in each one. Be sure and save all of your changes and repeat the replace command for all of the other 4 files. Once you've completed that, you should be ready to import your information. So let's go take a look at that. Open up your MySQL workbench and go to the Data Import/Restore selection on the left. Under the Data Import, you're going to go and browse and find the folder that we just created, the one that had MySampDB in the name. And I found it right here under the same folder that I originally set up, except for the different name. Double-click it, say OK, and then double-check to make sure that it will create the MySampDB database and the tables and the views that you're expecting. These are just for the student. Start the import, and then watch it run, just like we did with the export. Eventually, it will say it is finished. It would have created 4 tables: absence, grade event, score, and student. Plus, it would have created the views that we had. Now we're going to go out and do a query to verify that it worked. The first thing I need to do is refresh my databases so that I can see that the MySampDB is here and that it has those tables. I can right-click each table and then also run the select statement. And there it is. We can select all of the information from each of those tables that were originally in the SampDB, but now this is located in the MySampDB. Since our views were also created, we can run a select statement for grade stats or vStudent, like this. There you can see the averages of the grades, and there you can see the special vStudent that was created in one of your lessons. Everything has been imported, and everything has been created successfully. Such a simple process. Before we conclude this video, I'd like to show you one more thing about the data directory, comparing it with what's in your textbook, and using the workbench. We're going to go back and do a query, and we're going to use the show command exactly the way it is shown in your textbook. Begin by opening a query. On your query page, you will type show variables and then run it. You'll see over 400 entries listed below for your data directory. In fact, you will be able to find in that list the data directory itself, data dir, right here. But don't try to change your environment settings here. Always use the workbench status and system variables to the left to do any kind of changes to this information. That concludes the demonstration of MySQL Administrative Overview, Data Directory, plus exporting and importing a database.